Alright, welcome back to the Total Athlete vlog. This is vlog number 17 if I'm not mistaken. I've lost count. I've got a few videos to edit and I'm losing count of the days. But this is going to be a max velocity day, and it's also going to be a few full approach box jumps. I'm very lucky to have access to the athletics track today, so I am going to get into some sprint warm-up drills, mostly focused on like upright sprinting, max velocity type stuff. Like A skips, B skips, maybe some stiff leg banding or straight leg running, and just stuff where I'm focusing on short ground contacts, good mechanics, and I'm going to finish up with some full approach max height box jumps, seeing how high I can get on those. So I'm going to get straight into it. Let's go. That's an A skip or an A march. All right, we've done a couple of A's, done a couple of B's. I'm going to do the same march but with straight leg down. So focusing on a little bit more hamstring activation, trying to push the leg straight down rather than cycling it around. Very nice. So the emphasis on a max velocity day, especially on the warm-up, don't be afraid to extend out the warm-up a little bit, but the emphasis on the warm-up is shorter ground contact times, faster limb movement, just overall better potentiation and velocity. So make sure that you're resting adequately, especially when you get up to the top sets. Today we're just going to do some pretty standard 10-meter flies. I don't have timing gates with me, but I'm thinking that because I've put relatively big markers down, I can see as I pass here and I can get a rough eye time for how fast I'm doing on the 10-meter fly. So we'll see how that goes. As I said, A trip. Ooh, that didn't feel super fluid. Intention here is just to get practice in the warm-up, building up with upright mechanics and doing it as fast as possible, as short a ground contact times as possible, and nice upright torso angle. Good. Foot fire, it's sometimes called, I think. Let's do another A triple switch. Then I'm going to do some stiff leg bounds for distance, and then I'm going to do some stiff leg bounds for speed. Then I'm going to get into some build-ups, see how they're feeling, and then I can more or less start to build up into some faster and faster 10-meter flies. Okay, A triple switch again. Ooh. All right, stiff leg bounds for speed now. Here we go. Yeah, they felt pretty fast, pretty fluid. Some people like to do them no arm involvement whatsoever, so it's just entirely legs. I like to get a bit of momentum from the arms. Okay, one more time through that. So one more set for distance, one more set for speed. Then I'm going to do a couple of build-up sprints. Benefit of build-up sprints is it's just a fantastic way to warm up, because you're starting at a jog and you're working up to close to or maximum speed. So 2 or 3 of those, and that should warm you up quite nicely for the sprints. without having to spend an excessive amount of time doing a full warm-up. Two build-ups. First build-up, I'm going to work up to like 80-85% max speed by the time I've reached that last sandbag. And then on the second one, we'll do like 90-95% top speed. Distance-wise, I'm going to build up over 30 meters. So that is going to be, so between the bags is 10 meters. Further 10 meters is to that line. Further 10 meters is to this line. So call it 35. So tension here, starting with a light jog, and then every single stride, just gradually building the speed to the point that it's such a smooth transition from a jog to a maximum effort sprint that you're getting warmed up, but there's no abrupt change in speed. Very smooth. The thing that I do need to focus on more and cue more when I sprint, especially at top end speed, is pelvic position. When I don't think about it, or when I'm just being very unconscious, I will tend to let my pelvis tilt back, not excessively, this is just for example, but it will shift on the anterior end of neutral, when really you want it to be a little bit closer on the posterior end of neutral, or like completely neutral, so that when your knee is up here, you're not excessively stretching the hamstring. This is where the tension on the hamstring is the highest during the gait cycle of a sprint, so I'm really just focusing on keeping my pelvis tilted more this way, so there's less tension on the hamstring, but also it's just much better form. It enables more time for the hamstring, more range of motion for the hamstring to act on the leg, whereas it being really tight and not being able to reach as far here, if you tilt your pelvis this way, you've got a little bit more room to cycle the leg around. The more time the hamstring muscle has to act both eccentrically and then concentrically on the way down, the more force and power the leg is going to have to put force into the ground as you push off. So that's the intention on this build up here. I decided to move the camera angle so I could get a side-on view of the two sandbags. That way I can get a slightly more accurate timing for the 10-meter fly. It's a bit more difficult when you've got like a straight on view or like a slightly 45-degree view to see when you exactly cross the line, but from the side I can see when my chest crossed the line here, and hopefully I can see my chest when it crosses the line on the second sandbag. So for the build, I'm going to do a 10-meter build on the first one, then a 15, then a 20, and then from there I'm going to get as many, I'm going to say 20-25 meter builds as I can within a 10-minute timer. So full rest here, as much rest as possible. First one, let's get that 10-meter build and track the time. I was definitely still accelerating by the time I hit the second sandbag, because 10-meter build is nothing. But what will be really nice is to get a good, accurate comparison of the times as I increase the amount of build-up that I get. So hopefully the time that I got for that one will be a lot slower than the time I get for the 15-meter build, the 20-meter build, and then the full build. So I'm going to have full rest here. Maybe not completely full because it was only a shorter sprint, but the longer the build-up gets, the longer rest you need. And when you're doing max velocity sprinting, you absolutely have to make sure that you are fresh and you're fully recovered in between reps. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing sloppy sprinting and you're not going to be getting the stimulus in your body that it needs. So that was the first rep. I'm going to take a rest and then get into the second one. Oh, that one definitely felt a bit more awkward on the build-up. Right, I'm going to have a little bit more rest this time, probably something closer to 3 minutes. Then we'll extend the build to 20 meters, and then after 20, I'm just going to do full build, as much distance as I need. Probably going to limit to like 40. I don't think you need more than 40 meters for a build for 10-meter fly. Some people do, but I think by the time I've reached 30 meters of acceleration, I'm pretty much at top speed. on to our full 20-meter build. This should be much faster than the 15 and the 10, but we will see. We will see. So that was my last measured build. Now I'm really just gonna row back as far as I can, and then probably gonna aim for like 30-meter build on this next one. And once again, we'll compare the times. Full build. These, hopefully, upon review, should be the fastest flies that I do today. I'm thinking somewhere in the region of 3 or 2 today. I think that's all I've got in me. Obviously, max speed, max velocity sprints are the most fatiguing thing you can do, so definitely have to make sure that you don't do too much. It would be nice to have some timing gates so that I could actually see the difference in time between reps, but I've got to make the best of what we have. That felt fast. Don't know if it looked fast. I know one thing's for certain though. I was too tense on that one. I could feel my neck, my face, and my traps tensing up really hard on that. So I'm just trying to grit my teeth and push as hard as I can. But from experience, I always know when I relax more, relax my face, relax my neck, and don't try and squeeze really hard when I sprint, always go much faster, always much faster. All right, so that was our first sprint with the full build. I think I got 2 more in me, and then I'm gonna get into the jumps. Here comes number 2, focusing on relaxation once I get past the first bag. So that rep right there felt much faster. When we actually see the time later, when I look at it back when I'm editing, we'll see if it was actually objectively faster, but it felt faster. As I said, I've got 1 more in me. This is basically what I've been doing in between sets, just sitting like this, trying to relax as much as possible, activate the parasympathetic nervous system or the rest and digest nervous system, trying to make sure that I'm not still too fatigued when I come into the next sprint. I want to be fully rested. I've got 1 more max effort sprint in me today. Then I want to see how high I can go on the box jumps. In terms of like actual timed rest, I don't often time my rest, but just as an experiment, so I get a rough idea how much rest I need, I've been timing it on my stopwatch, and for the last 2, I was resting something like 4.5 minutes. That seemed like enough, and it meant that I was fresh, but if when we look at back and the times have steadily increased, I've gotten slower, then potentially I needed more rest, or I just need to work on sprinting a little bit more. But I'm gonna go for another 4 or 5 minutes rest on this one. Then I'm gonna go all out for 1 more. Nice, stimulating session, short and sharp. That was a total of, up until this point, it's been 30 minutes. So that's really good. With jumps, probably take me up to 45 minutes total. And then we'll see how we're getting on after that point. Speaking of recovery, I remember listening to this Modern Wisdom Chris Williamson podcast, and he had Mike Israetel on, and he was talking about a strength coach that mentored Mike, or he worked with Mike a few years back, and they said that if you're standing, you should sit. If you're sitting, you should lie down, and if you're lying down, you should sleep. That's the best way to have the most or best recovery in between sessions. I don't know if the same logic applies in between like sets and reps, like try and rest as much as possible between reps of a sprint. I'd feel a bit weird lying down on the track, but hey, maybe that would mean I recover even faster, who knows. But sitting like this is pretty comfortable, and sitting like this for 5 minutes is just fine. All right, I'm gonna get into my last rep. One benefit of the box jumps is that reduces the impact of the landing after every single rep, so you're not having all of the extra impact from every single rep that you do on the jumps. Other benefit is that there's a hip mobility benefit as well, so there is definitely a benefit from going really full triple extension into full triple flexion, much like in the Olympic lift, but obviously in a slightly different context here. So I'm going to get into it. Don't need loads of warm-up because I've already kind of done that with the sprints, so let's get into it. On the warm-up sets, I am going to do both approaches, right, left, and left, right, curving in from opposite angles. But as I get towards maximal attempts, I'm just going to stick with my strong approach, left, right, and see how high I can go. One more each way, then we'll increase the height. I believe this box is 24 inches. I'm gonna go up to, so I believe this box is 18 inches. 18 plus 24 is 42 inches. That's like waist height for me. Definitely not gonna be able to get this with straight legs, but I will be able to get it with bent legs. I'm focusing here on pushing and getting low through the penultimate. So after the second to last step before I come in, this one here, I'm trying to get low and lead with my knee, push my knee through the penultimate so I get low, rather than trying to lead with my heel like this. That felt pretty high actually. Let's try it with a right-left approach and then another one on each, and then we'll jump it up again in terms of height. A little bit more flexion on that one, but still, I think I got decently high there. Good. Everyone will always have a natural tendency for a plant that they jump highest with, whether that's, a left leg, a right leg, or a left right, or a right left, and also an approach angle as well. The vast majority of two-legged jumpers will always jump higher with a curve into the takeoff, and pretty much any jumper will, honestly. It's very difficult to jump straight on without turning your hips slightly, because as you turn your hips, let's say I'm jumping towards you, if you turn your hips this way, it creates a nice braking force to impede your horizontal momentum going this way and translate that. Assuming your legs are strong enough, or the stronger your legs are, the more of that momentum you can then transfer upwards. Nice. And what's great about doing onto boxes, as I said, is that I can do a lot more reps like this, and I can get way more practice with my full approach mechanics, because I don't have to worry about the extra stress from landing from this height or close to this height with my feet. That's basically, I don't know exactly the proportions of the force, but most of the force that gets imparted in your tendons, your ligaments, and just your body in general comes from the landing, not from the takeoff. The takeoff, you're coming at a certain speed, but the landing, it's just all coming straight down, and all of that force has to be absorbed through your tendons and muscles. So always good to do occasional box jumps. That one definitely wasn't as good as the one before, but hey, I'm focusing on left-right today anyway. I've basically added on another 18-inch box on top of that one. So 24 plus 18 plus 18 equals 60 inches. So just for reference, you can see how tall that is in relation to me. I'm like 5'11", 6 foot, depending on who you ask and what time of day it is. So that's about a foot shorter than I am. So if I can make this today, I'll be incredibly pleased. Only left-right approaches now. As I mentioned before, the main factor for success here isn't just vertical jump height. Now it's hip mobility, like how quickly can you get your feet up into a nice squat position. This might be the highest box I jump on today. If this feels like it goes really easily, then maybe I'll increase. But let's take a look and see how high we can actually jump onto this. The approach, man, that feels so weird. Not quite. I think I can make one of these today. Didn't get my left leg up in time. Oh yes. Decent, very good.